fan of winter. Coming into today, as the day after the winter solstice, I am cheering that we are finally going in the right direction. Sunset is at 4:52 today. But in all seriousness, I don't like the dark. I never have. I have terrible night vision, and I hate cold weather. So Mick had an easy sell when advertising California. But even here, where the winters are mild, it's impossible not to feel the impact of the seasons. I miss the sunlight and the time that I am so accustomed to spending outdoors, walking my dog, playing in the yard with my daughter, is so noticeably missing. For so many people, especially those who struggle with seasonal affect disorder, being physically indoors leaves them equally trapped inside their own heads, where the emotional engagement mirrors the physical. Because it's time that we're used to looking outward at the beauty of the earth. But without that little bit of sunlight and externalization, we're forced to live with ourselves a little more intimately. Forced to see a little more of the darkness, both out there and within ourselves. And we don't always like what we see. It's one of the reasons why I find the observance of Hanukkah to be so meaningful. Bringing a little bit of light to the darkness, I am reminded that somewhere inside myself is a resilience waiting to be found. That's what the Hanukkah story is all about. A people with a long history of suffering are torn from their homes. Their sacred space is desecrated. And they themselves are tortured and persecuted for 2 years, until at the height of their suffering, a small band decides to fight back. And they win back their home and their temple. Exactly 2 years from when it was first taken. And rededicate the temple as their home. Like the solstice, it is commemorating the intersection of light and dark on that same December day. Commemorating the dark times by remembering that light does return, even when all we can feel is the darkness. And I'll be honest, it has felt especially important for the past couple of years to hold on to that intersection, because the rise in anti-Semitism has been terrifying to so many people in the Jewish community. And nothing made that more apparent than the shooting at the Tree of Life synagogue a little over a year ago, in which 11 people were murdered by a white supremacist in Pittsburgh. It made the Hanukkah story feel so real. A sacred space so thoroughly desecrated by violence and bigotry. It is so tempting for me to see Hanukkah as a story about lightness defeating darkness and good triumphing over evil. Because in the winter months, somehow the pain and disconnection that comes with looking at our broken, angry, and vengeful world makes me so desperately want to believe in simple stories. And I want to hate the darkness because it leaves us with no choice but to let those realities in. The earth is dying. White nationalism is booming all over America and Europe, and to be a person outside of society's norms is an act of courage. And here I stand, wishing I could go for more jaunts in the park with my family. The darkness asks that I sit with my own discomfort of my own privilege. But the darkness is not my true enemy. It merely reminds me of my own inaction. In many ways, equating darkness with brokenness is a fallacy that leads to apathy when we are so deeply in need of inspiration. But how do we find that inspiration in the dark when it is the dark that we are fundamentally running from? And here, I find Hanukkah to be such a wonderful teacher in reminding me that it is, in fact, not a simple story. That the darkness that the candlelight seeks to eliminate is not evil or even persecution. At its core, Hanukkah is a story about uncertainty. Uncertainty as to whether the Jewish people would make their way back home. Uncertainty that the temple would be salvageable. Uncertainty that they would have enough oil to accomplish a rededication ceremony. Uncertainty as to whether the light would actually provide solace and healing. But they chose to lean into the uncertainties. At some point, in order to move towards hope, they had to say, darkness, give me insight. Darkness, teach my body and my heart to see what my eyes cannot. Darkness, teach me faith. Not in God, but in myself. That is the message of Hanukkah. That we are enough. That we hold enough hope even in our despair to transform the world around us. To bring home and healing to our kindred. For me, it is the perfect allegory for how people survive trauma and inspire change. Because throughout history, we've seen people against all odds who've been torn from their home or flee in the dead of night with all that they have for something better. Right now, in our country, this is what it means to be Jewish, Muslim, LGBTQIA, an immigrant, a person of color, or a person without money. To have deep and abiding uncertainties and lean in with faith because that is how to survive. Darkness is living with the uncertainties that are all around us and saying we choose to rededicate ourselves anyway. Beth Kissler could not help but feel uncertain when she walked toward the Tree of Life Hanukkah lighting last year. Her husband had survived the shooting, but it was an act of faith to make her way publicly for the first time back to the synagogue. She feared she might be targeted. But remembering that Hanukkah is a time to be proud of who you are, she continued to walk. She thought about her Baptist friend who had prayed with her the day of the shooting. The Hindu temple that invited her to join them for a service. And survivors of the mosque shooting in Quebec, who at the request of a Pittsburgh Muslim community center, traveled there to meet with Tree of Life survivors and join them in their healing journey. And when she arrived at the candle lighting, hundreds from all faiths and backgrounds had gathered to share in the public display of pride and resilience. Leaning into the uncertainty of what was to come, the darkness gave Beth insight into her own strength, illuminating the beauty of her broader community, and gave her the resolve to express her faith exactly as she felt it. Hanukkah is a holiday that is typically observed at home, but this was was no ordinary Hanukkah in Pittsburgh. It couldn't be. Because they were reliving a rededication. But for hundreds of people from all faiths to show up at that synagogue, to spread light together, sent a very specific message. That the sanctuary being rededicated is not just one sanctuary, but millions. Because we are the sanctuaries. We are the home that has been found and renewed. We too rededicate ourselves in these winter months. The purest sanctuary that will always house us is ourselves. And we are called to rededicate it to the service of love. And when all of our sanctuaries of love come together, the darkness becomes a gift. Because we see through it with a new kind of vision. A vision that says hate has no home here. The miracle of light coming into the darkness is right in front of us. Because we are the miracle that outlasts the darkness. We can lean into it and learn from it and let that knowledge serve as the light. So this Hanukkah season, let's show our neighbors that they aren't alone. That we are rededicating ourselves to be living sanctuaries. And together, we will take one more step towards the temple of light that we will one day build. Blessed be, and amen.